Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. Some women lose friends when they change. Sigma females lose them the moment they arrive. They walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because they're loud, flashy, or thirsty for attention, but because they carry a kind of stillness that exposes noise. No small talk, no fake smiles, no secret auditions for approval, just presence. And for most people, that's terrifying. Here's a fact to chew on. According to recent studies, over 61% of adult women report feeling disconnected from their social circles. But Sigma females? They don't feel disconnected. They feel disinterested. Why? Because friendships in the modern world often come with unwritten contracts. Flatter egos, feed delusions, pretend not to notice dysfunction. Sigma females don't sign those contracts, they shred them. This isn't about being cold or antisocial. This is about a breed of woman who refuses to bond over fake wounds, filtered lives, and performative support circles. And yes, sometimes that means she walks alone, but not lonely. So buckle up, because we're diving into 12 brutally honest reasons why Sigma females have no friends, and why that's not a flaw, it's a feature. And if you're a Sigma female watching this, don't worry. We promise not to tell anyone how much you actually enjoy your own company. Let's get into it. Number 1, she makes performative people feel fake just by existing. People don't realize how exhausting it is to constantly perform, to fake enthusiasm, to laugh when you don't find it funny, to pretend you care about things just so you fit in. Most people do it so automatically they don't even notice. They've mistaken performance for personality. But then a Sigma female walks in, and suddenly all those social masks start to feel ridiculous. She doesn't need to perform. She doesn't fake interest. She doesn't overcompliment or try to manage other people's emotions. Her authenticity is like a quiet earthquake. She's not trying to impress anyone, but that's exactly why people feel exposed around her. Next to her raw realness, everything fake starts to look like bad theater, and it hits hard. It's not that she calls people out directly. She doesn't need to. Her presence does the work. People feel uncomfortable because deep down they know they're not being real. And when someone like her is around, someone who's brutally honest with herself and refuses to play roles, it creates an unspoken mirror. A mirror that reflects everything performative, forced, and inconsistent. Most people can't handle that kind of mirror. They avoid it, resent it, or label it judgmental, when really, they're judging themselves. This is why Sigma females rarely have friends. Not because they push people away, but because people feel uneasy being themselves around someone who's not trying to be anyone but herself. The energy doesn't match. The performances don't land. The scripts fall flat. And here's the brutal twist. She's not even trying to prove a point. She's not out to expose anyone. She's just being. But that kind of being, it threatens those who are constantly doing. Her calm makes people restless. Her stillness makes their noise unbearable. Her truth makes their filters obvious. So people pull away, but they never forget her. Because once you've stood next to someone that real, everything fake becomes painfully loud. And silence starts to speak louder than words. That's the Sigma female's curse, and her superpower. Number 2, she's not interested in shared victimhood. Most people bond by bleeding together. They turn pain into a social glue, trading trauma stories, sharing complaints, and building friendships on mutual misery. It's the, if you've suffered like me, you get me approach. Misery doesn't just love company, it demands it. But here's where the Sigma female breaks the pattern. She refuses to build relationships on emotional debris. She's not impressed by suffering contests. She doesn't see pain as currency. She's not interested in circling the same wounds over and over just to feel connected. While others find comfort in echo chambers of complaint, she finds it draining. She's wired differently. Pain to her isn't a badge, it's a lesson. You either grow through it, or you get stuck using it as your personality. So when someone tries to bond with her through endless venting, dramatics, or emotional spirals, it falls flat. Not because she doesn't care, but because she doesn't entertain cycles that go nowhere. She listens, yes, but she's scanning for clarity, for truth, for action. If it's just recycled self-pity disguised as relating, she checks out mentally. And most people can feel that. That's why she's often labeled as cold, too logical, or emotionally detached. But the truth is, she's just not interested in friendships that depend on shared dysfunction to survive. She believes healing is private, strength is quiet, and conversation should lead somewhere, not spiral into deeper helplessness. She doesn't want to sit in the dark with you just to prove she's loyal. She wants to help you find the switch, flip it, and move forward. And let's be honest, this scares people. Misery loves being mirrored, but a Sigma female holds up a different kind of mirror, the kind that doesn't reflect back your pain but questions why you're still holding it. Most people aren't ready for that. So they say she doesn't connect. But the real issue, she won't perform the shared victimhood ritual. She won't participate in the group therapy cosplay. And in a world where trauma bonding is the new friendship bracelet, that makes her dangerous and very, very alone. Number 3. She doesn't participate in emotional maintenance work. In most friendships, there's an unspoken rule book. You check in regularly. You send just thinking of you messages. You respond to birthday wishes. You react to Instagram stories. And if someone goes quiet for too long, it's seen as a red flag. Maybe they're mad. Maybe they're fading. Maybe they don't care anymore. That's the emotional maintenance work people expect from relationships. Keep the connection warm, even if it's just with empty words. But the Sigma female doesn't do any of that. Not because she's cold or careless, but because she sees connection differently. She doesn't believe friendship should require performance. She doesn't see silence as a threat. She doesn't feel obligated to update people on her every thought just to prove she's still around. She might go weeks or even months without reaching out, and to her, that's completely normal. Not a problem, not a crisis, just life. She values depth over frequency, presence over performance, and most importantly, she doesn't use guilt as a measuring stick for love. This makes her incredibly hard to understand for people who rely on constant validation to feel secure in a relationship. To them, silence means something's wrong. Distance means something's changed. They expect emotional upkeep, like a house that needs dusting. But she sees friendship like a solid foundation. If it's real, it doesn't need constant tending. It simply is. When people confront her with, "You never reach out," or "I haven't heard from you," they're often met with calm honesty. "I didn't think I needed to." Not to be harsh, but because she genuinely doesn't believe connection should be kept alive through forced communication. She trusts the bond enough to let it breathe, and this rattles people. Because we live in a world where friendship is often confused with emotional babysitting. If you're not constantly showing up, people assume you don't care. But the Sigma female isn't wired to play that game. She shows care in different ways, through presence, depth, loyalty, and honesty, not through reminders that she still exists. So people misread her silence as disinterest. But it's not. It's sovereignty. She lives outside the emotional clock most people run on. And for those who need constant check-ins to feel seen, she'll always feel like a mystery they can't decode, and a closeness they never quite reach. Number 4, she makes others feel unnecessary. There's a quiet intimidation that comes from watching someone who doesn't flinch, doesn't panic, and doesn't ask for help. The Sigma female operates like a well-oiled machine. She doesn't announce her plans or dramatize her problems. She just gets things done, with or without anyone's involvement. And that terrifies people. Not because she's rude, not because she's arrogant, but because she makes others feel unnecessary, like their presence doesn't change the outcome, like she'd still be standing even if they weren't there. And for many people, especially those whose identity is tied to being helpful, supportive, or essential, that's a quiet kind of ego death. She doesn't rely on others to complete tasks, solve emotional problems, or validate her decisions. Her emotional self-sufficiency makes people question their role in her life. They don't know where they fit, because she doesn't create false needs to make others feel important. There's no "please save me" energy, no emotional damsel routine. And without that, a lot of people don't know how to connect. This is especially hard for people who are used to being needed to feel loved. The caretakers, the fixers, the attention seekers who interpret independence as rejection. They take her strength personally, as if her being capable is an insult to their worth. But it's not. It's just that she's built herself in a way that doesn't require scaffolding. She's whole on her own. And that threatens anyone who only knows how to relate by filling gaps. The truth is, most people don't want to be loved. They want to be needed. And when they realize she doesn't need them, even if she values them, it shakes them. They start creating imaginary problems to prove their relevance. They insert themselves where they are not required. And when that doesn't work, they quietly walk away, convincing themselves she doesn't care. But she does care. She just refuses to play emotional codependency games. She knows that love without dependency is rare, and most people don't know how to exist in that kind of space. So they leave. Not because she pushed them away, but because they didn't know how to stay without feeling like the hero. Number 5. She treats silence as a language, not a gap. Silence makes most people squirm. They rush to fill it with chatter, jokes, small talk. Anything to avoid that eerie stillness where true thoughts start creeping in. In most friendships, silence is treated like something's wrong, a problem, a pause that needs fixing. But the Sigma female doesn't see it that way. To her, silence isn't awkward, it's honest. She treats silence like a language, a powerful one that reveals more than forced words ever could. She's not the type to talk just to keep things comfortable. She won't fake interest or pretend to be busy in conversation just to save someone else from their own discomfort. If there's nothing real to say, she simply says nothing. And that simplicity feels radical in a world addicted to noise. This unnerves people, deeply, because silence, when it's not filled with distraction, starts to echo. And in that echo, people hear their own thoughts, insecurities, contradictions. Sitting in silence next to a Sigma female can feel like sitting in front of a quiet judge, even though she's not judging you. She's just present, and being fully present without performance is so rare, it feels confrontational. Some take her quiet as distance. Others call it coldness, but it's not. She's just someone who doesn't fake energy to fill emotional voids. She's learned that the loudest things people say often hide the things they are not ready to admit. So she listens. And if the moment calls for silence, she honors it. She doesn't panic, over-explain, or perform just to be likable. This is why so many people misread her. They think something's off when she goes quiet. But really, that's when she's the most herself. Not hiding, not forcing, just being. In a world where people bond through endless noise, the Sigma female connects through calm. And for those who fear what silence might reveal, being around her becomes uncomfortable, because she doesn't give them the distraction they've built their identity around. Number 6. Her presence doesn't ask for permission or applause. The Sigma female doesn't walk into a room looking to be liked. She's not scanning faces for approval or adjusting her energy to make others feel at ease. She's not performing, blending in, or dimming herself to avoid attention. She shows up as she is, fully, quietly, and without apology. And that kind of presence, the kind that doesn't ask to exist, unsettles people more than arrogance ever could. She doesn't compete, but she also doesn't cower. She doesn't need to announce her worth, but she won't minimize it either. She moves like someone who's not waiting for validation, and that alone flips the entire social script. Most people are used to individuals softening themselves to be more palatable. They expect friendliness to be loud, self-worth to be dressed in humility, and power to ask for permission. She does none of that. She simply exists, unbothered, grounded, and whole. And that shakes insecure people to their core. They can't place her. She doesn't try to charm, doesn't flatter unnecessarily, and doesn't seek approval from anyone. Without knowing why, people feel the need to either prove something to her or distance themselves entirely, not because she's doing anything wrong, but because her self-assurance makes others question their own. They label her intimidating, not because she's harsh or aggressive, but because she doesn't shrink. She doesn't make herself smaller so others can feel bigger. And in a world where many friendships are built on ego management and emotional ego stroking, her presence becomes a threat to the fragile. This is why she's often misunderstood. They say she's too intense, too quiet, or thinks she's better. But none of that is true. She's simply not interested in asking permission to exist. She doesn't chase applause because she's not performing in the first place. And without the need for approval, she becomes untouchable. Not because she pushes people away, but because most people only know how to connect through roles, masks, and mutual insecurity. Around her, those games don't work. So they leave, or stay quiet, or stare from a distance, trying to understand how someone can take up space without asking if it's okay. Number 7. She doesn't need witnesses to her life. Most people live like they're on stage, telling stories, showing off wins, broadcasting heartbreaks, all in hopes that someone out there will clap, comment, or care. It's not always vanity. Sometimes it's just human instinct. The need to be seen, heard, and validated by others is what keeps many friendships alive. But the Sigma female isn't built like that. She doesn't need an audience. She doesn't need witnesses. She is the observer and the experience. She processes her life privately. Her highs don't need applause. Her lows don't need sympathy. She celebrates herself in silence, heals in silence, and evolves without posting it like a public memo. While others seek mirrors in the form of people, someone to reflect their worth back to them, she's already built her mirror internally. She knows who she is without needing someone else to confirm it. And this is where everything shifts. When people realize she doesn't need them to clap for her, cry with her, or co-sign her choices, they begin to question their place in her life. Most people only know how to connect through shared witness. I was there for you. I saw what you did. We've been through it together. But she's not playing that script. She lives in such self-contained sovereignty that people feel unnecessary, not because she's trying to push them away, but because she's not leaning on them for meaning. This leaves people confused, unsettled, even rejected. They wonder, what am I supposed to do here if she doesn't need me to validate her? The answer? Nothing. She's not looking for validation. She's looking for alignment. And very few people know how to just exist beside someone without trying to define them, fix them, or be credited for their journey. So they drift. Not because she wasn't open, but because she didn't offer the usual emotional stage most friendships are built on. And without the need to be needed, she becomes untouchable, mysterious, unrelatable, but also quietly powerful. Because the truth is, while others are still performing for applause, the Sigma female has already left the stage and built her own world backstage where peace doesn't require an audience. Number 8. She outgrows people faster than they can adapt. Most people evolve at a pace that keeps their relationships intact. They adjust slowly, change carefully, and keep old friendships alive out of habit or guilt. But the Sigma female doesn't move like that. Her growth is rapid, sharp, and relentless. She upgrades her mindset the way others update their phones, frequently, decisively, and without asking permission. She doesn't stay attached to outdated versions of herself just to make others comfortable. If a belief no longer fits, she drops it. If a habit no longer serves, she cuts it. And if a person no longer aligns, she drifts. No dramatics, no emotional ceremony, no extended explanation. The problem is most people can't keep up. What bonded her to someone 6 months ago no longer applies. The shared goals, outgrown. The emotional connection, diminished. The version of her they knew, evolved. While they're still relating to who she was, she's already become someone new, and she's not coming back to explain it. This constant evolution leaves others feeling confused or left behind. They may say she's changed, as if that's a betrayal. They try to reattach through old conversations, old patterns, nostalgia. But she doesn't live in the past. She's not slowing down so others can catch up, and that feels like abandonment to those who are used to emotionally static people. But for her, staying still is the real betrayal. She knows when something no longer fits, be it a mindset, a relationship, or a dynamic, and she lets it go without emotional ceremony. Not because she's heartless, but because she's focused on becoming, not preserving. She's building forward, not dragging the past behind her. This is why she rarely has long-term friendships. It's not that she can't, it's that most people don't evolve fast enough to stay relevant in her world. and she won't dilute herself just to maintain a connection that no longer fits the frequency she's on. Her growth is a quiet filter. The deeper she goes, the fewer people remain. Not out of pride, out of necessity, because she's not chasing companionship, she's chasing truth. And the truth changes everything, including who's still standing beside her. Number 9. She doesn't worship the social gods. There's an unspoken religion in modern society, one that worships attention, trendiness, and social status. People chase likes, cling to relevance, and build their worth on how visible or admired they are. It's not just online, it's everywhere. At work, in friendships, in the way people drop names, align with popular opinions, and obsess over being seen. But the Sigma female, she doesn't bow to those gods. In fact, she doesn't even acknowledge them. She doesn't care who's trending, who's liked, or who holds the imaginary crown in a social circle. She's immune to status games. Popularity doesn't impress her. Group approval doesn't influence her. And that makes her dangerous in a system built entirely on external validation. People who thrive on admiration feel it instantly. Her indifference hits them like disrespect. They're used to being noticed, praised, envied. They're used to people shifting around them, adjusting behavior, giving energy. But she doesn't play that game. She won't pretend someone's important just because they have followers or status. She sees through the image, and she's not afraid to walk past it without blinking. This drives certain people crazy, not because she insulted them, but because she didn't acknowledge their currency. To her, attention isn't power, authenticity is, and since she's not trying to climb any social ladder, those at the top of it feel invisible around her. That invisibility makes them spiral. They call her cold, difficult, or arrogant, but what they really mean is, she didn't worship me like others do. The Sigma female doesn't follow social leaders. She exits the room entirely if the conversation feels like a popularity contest. And because she doesn't seek approval, she doesn't fear rejection. That kind of freedom is threatening to people who depend on being liked to feel valuable. She's not trying to rebel, she's just not interested. She knows that being admired doesn't mean being respected, and being visible doesn't mean being real. So she walks her own way, quietly, confidently. And in doing so, she exposes how hollow the social game really is. That's why the social gods can't stand her, because she's proof you can be whole without ever kneeling. Number 10. She refuses emotional entanglement as currency. Most friendships today are built on a silent trade agreement. I show you my wounds, you show me yours. People bond by oversharing, trauma dumping, or constantly being wrapped in each other's emotional chaos. Secrets become currency, drama becomes glue, and mutual dysfunction becomes the foundation. But the Sigma female? She doesn't trade in that market. She values emotional sovereignty like some people value status or wealth. She doesn't spill her deepest wounds just to feel close to someone. She doesn't invite people into her inner world just to keep a connection alive. She sees emotional entanglement for what it often is, an unspoken form of control. A way to stay tangled in each other's lives, not through growth but through mutual dependency. That's where most people misunderstand her. They think she's guarded, too private, or hard to connect with. But she's not hiding, she's protecting. She knows that once emotions are entangled too tightly, friendships can become cages. Expectations creep in, boundaries blur, and suddenly you're carrying someone else's chaos just to prove you care. The Sigma female refuses that. She doesn't want to be responsible for someone else's emotional balance, and she won't hand over hers either. Her inner world is a fortress, not a marketplace. She believes connection should be rooted in presence, not in pain-sharing competitions. She can support you without merging with you. She can care without collapsing into your drama. This makes her unrelatable to people who only know intimacy through emotional flooding. The ones who bond by venting endlessly or turning every conversation into a therapy session feel disconnected from her, not because she lacks depth, but because she doesn't offer it on demand. And that's the brutal truth. People who rely on emotional chaos to feel significant can't handle someone who remains untouched by it. They can't pull her into their storms. They can't get her to bleed on cue, so they say she's distant. But really, she's just free. Free from the need to be entangled to feel close. Free from emotional codependency disguised as friendship. and free from the pressure to prove her loyalty through suffering. Number 11. She doesn't speak in group code. In most friend groups, there's an unspoken language, a coded system that keeps everything running smoothly. People don't say exactly what they mean. They use hints, soft suggestions, vague complaints. There's a script to follow. Laugh, even if it's not funny. Agree, even if you disagree. And sugarcoat everything to keep the peace. It's not honesty, it's emotional diplomacy. And it's how many friendships survive. But the Sigma female refuses to speak that language. She doesn't deal in hints. She doesn't wrap the truth in soft packaging. She says what she means clearly and directly, not to be rude, but to be real. And in a world full of people performing connection through pretense, that level of honesty can feel violent. She won't fake laugh to make you feel better. She won't pretend to care about something just because everyone else does. If something feels off, she'll say it. If she's not interested, she won't force herself to play along. There's no guessing game with her, no decoding what she really meant. What she says is what she means, and that makes people uneasy. Because most people are not used to truth in its raw form. They're used to watered-down versions, softened opinions, and polite lies. When someone refuses to participate in that system, it threatens the entire dynamic. Suddenly, everyone feels exposed. The fake laughs stop landing. The passive-aggressive digs don't bounce back. The inside jokes that usually mask real tension start to fall flat. People label her as too serious, blunt, or difficult. But what they really mean is she doesn't follow the group script. She doesn't participate in emotional theater. And without that shared code, the group dynamic starts to crack. This is why she rarely stays in tight-knit social circles. Not because she's antisocial, but because she refuses to betray truth for the sake of comfort. She doesn't do politeness at the expense of honesty. She would rather sit in silence than participate in a language built on fake bonding. And for groups that survive on keeping up appearances, that kind of raw clarity isn't just unwelcome, it's dangerous. Because once one person stops pretending, everyone else has to face the fact that they still are. Number 12. She triggers abandonment issues without lifting a finger. Some people walk into your life and immediately feel permanent. You sense they'll stick around, ride the emotional roller coasters with you, and reassure you that no matter how chaotic things get, they're not going anywhere. But the Sigma female doesn't give off that energy, not even a little. She carries the calm, detached presence of someone who could disappear tomorrow and not leave a trace. Not because she's cruel, but because she's complete. She doesn't form attachments out of fear or routine. She connects deeply, but not dependently. And that silent emotional independence triggers something raw in people who secretly fear being left. They feel it before she even speaks. Her energy says, I don't need you to feel whole. I can love you and still leave you. That possibility that someone could care without clinging, be close without being trapped, terrifies people who only feel secure when there's emotional reassurance on loop. They begin testing her, often without realizing it. They push boundaries, they create tension, they make dramatic exits to see if she'll chase. And she doesn't. She never does. Not because she's heartless, but because she doesn't believe in proving her worth through emotional drama. If someone wants to go, she lets them. If someone tries to manipulate her with silence or distance, she offers space, not reaction. This drives them into a spiral. They mistake her calm for coldness. Her silence feels like abandonment, even when she's just honoring her own peace. The truth is, people who fear being left often become the very ones who push others away. And when that strategy fails to get a reaction from her, they panic. They label her as emotionally unavailable or too independent. But what they're really saying is, she doesn't need my chaos to feel connected. And that's something they don't know how to handle. The Sigma female doesn't trigger abandonment issues by being harsh. She does it by existing in a way that proves you were never in control. She's the type who could walk out of your life with love in her heart and never check back. And for people addicted to emotional dependence, that's the most terrifying kind of goodbye. Sigma female isn't friendless because she's flawed. She's friendless because most people don't know how to connect without needing, without performing, or without controlling. She doesn't operate in the emotional economy of today's friendships, where chaos is currency, validation is demanded, and masks are worn like uniforms. She's not interested in playing roles, soothing egos, or trading emotional labor just to feel close. Her solitude isn't loneliness, it's self-respect. It's peace. It's power. She moves with quiet authority, speaks only when there's meaning, and connects only when there's truth. That kind of presence exposes everything fake, weak, or performative in others. And when people realize they can't manipulate her, decode her, or feel needed by her, they retreat. Not because she pushes them out, but because she refuses to play small just to make them feel big. She doesn't ask for applause. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't hold the door open for people who only understood her when she was dimmer, softer, more manageable. And if that means walking alone, so be it. Because the Sigma female would rather sit in silence with her soul than speak in code with people who never dared to be real. So no, she doesn't have many friends. But she has something far more rare, integrity. And that's a price too high for most people to pay. Let them go. She never needed them to begin with. If this message hit deeper than expected, if you saw pieces of yourself or someone you know in these words, don't just scroll past. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss raw, unfiltered truths like this again. Like if you value realness over popularity. Drop a comment if you've ever felt misunderstood for simply being whole on your own. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that solitude isn't weakness. It's a power most people will never understand. This channel isn't for everyone. It's for the few who see through the noise. Welcome to the inner circle.